a lye solution that we made out of ashes and water. Let it soak overnight, supposedly to let the hair follicles, let the hair come out, and we'll see if it did that or not when we start scraping. So right now I'm just making some incisions along the edge so that we can stretch the hide on a frame that Charles is just nailing some nails into the opening here so that we can hang this hide and stretch it, and then we'll scrape it. So we're gonna make some drum heads out of this hide. So it doesn't need to be tanned, it just needs to be scraped clean on both sides and then made into and then dried so it becomes rawhide. And then later when you're ready to cover the drum, you can soak it again and it becomes very soft again so that you can put it on a hoop for a drum. The frame is going to be the right size, so before we start latching, we're going to just use a bungee and we're going to hang the hide from the neck end up onto the top nail there. I might need some help with. It's still pretty heavy. Okay. Still got lots of water in it.
Rather than sideways?
You can keep giving me more rope because we need to keep pulling it through, and by the time we get all the way around to the other side, it's a lot of, as I lace through the holes and loop it onto these nails, if you have a frame and you just want to go around the frame instead of putting nails on, you can do that. I just find this is a little easier going just looping over nails, and I'm pulling this lacing through, and it gets so that it's good to have a helper or two, because you got to kind of sew it through, and there's no other way you can get this lace on here without pulling it through every hole. So the bungees are holding it in an approximate place. We get the lacing up, and then the best case scenario is that your lace is all in one piece, but it's kind of hard to know how much you're going to need. So we're just estimating, and we'll have to splice on another piece or tie on another piece if it's not long enough. And then once it's all up in place into the holes, then you can tighten it out to the frame, and it's good to just have it as tight as you can possibly yank on those holes, because the holes will rip open if you pull too hard. And then you just tighten it until it's tight all the way around. Charles has got me lots of end here. It's taking way more cord than I estimated. So I'm just going to tie it on this nail, and we'll continue. And then when we tighten it, we can tighten it at the points where it's joined on. Dwayne, you want to feed this through, or Charles, can you? Are you busy? So this is what you call fleshing. This is the flesh side of the animal, and we've got some layers here. This is like the meat, the muscle that got left on after it was skinned, and that of course has to come off. But underneath that is a little layer of tissue, and it's what actually joins it to the skin itself. so that this is the layer that we want to get off. Now I'm using this ulu. It's a woman's knife, comes from the north, and it seems to be really good, but it's quite sharp, so I have to be very careful. Now there's another method that you can do, is just kind of scrape it like this, and you're just really breaking the fibers into little manageable, you know, hairs that you can, that will kind of come off in bits. And I'm finding that that method is good for where the skinning has been quite thorough, whereas this area I can kind of grab it, you see, and I can it's of course sort of a continuation of the skinning method at this point, because you're still taking off meat. But this was well skinned. There's no holes in it anywhere. There's quite a bit of muscle left in here, sinew, like this is sinew in here. The old days they used to use strips of sinew for sewing. So they would take this off and bare the sinew. Here, let's see if we can do that. You know, it ripped it, but if you can actually take this off in this direction, you can see the sinew is in long strips, and they would actually let it dry, and you could separate it, and you get a piece of thread that long. And I think there's a lot of people that still use sinew to sew with. It dries quite brittle, and you know, it'll break eventually. I usually use dental floss instead of sinew, but that's the idea, is you're looking for something, you know, nice long strips. So that's what's under there. That's kind of a bonus, and I don't know if I'll be able to get any nice long sinew strips out of this. You can see the kind of threads in the sinew here. And moose is particularly good for good strong sinew in on either side of the backbone. But you know, this moose wasn't skinned for that purpose, so it's a bit, you know, it's a bit chopped up. So we'll see. But anyway, it's kind of like an ongoing, you know, you're peeling back the layers where they're big enough to kind of grab and cut behind. And if they're not big enough, like in here, it's quite well skinned already. So I'm just going to kind of do this scraping method and try and clean it off, because we're not going to tan this side. We're just going to get it nice and clean and dry it, and then it'll be called rawhide because it's not tanned, it's raw, and we're going to use it for drum heads. So we want it nice and clean, but we don't have to worry too much about the, you know, the final getting every little fiber off of there. If we were tanning, we'd want it to be completely clean, and of course it would take days to do. So that's the flesh side, and we're going to just keep working at it. I've got, this area is pretty clean, and we've got helpers, so we're going to just do a lot of this part, and then we go, once this side is done, then we'll go and see how hard or how easy it is to take the hair off. Normally, if I was using the ulu for cleaning fish or something, I'd have it sharpened by now. But it's good. It seems that it shouldn't be too sharp, because, you know, like things like this, I'm going in with the point, and I don't want to stab that skin. I just want to get the fibers off. So there's, you know, different directions I can go in and everything, and not worry too much, because my ulu is not that sharp. That sinew, so I'm just taking off this top layer of it. And that sinew is all the pink stuff. It's a nice piece. I haven't had any sinew for a long time to sew with, so that'll be a really nice thing to have. I'm trying not to nick it with the knife so that all the threads that I rip off of it will all be long. If you weren't interested in saving the sinew, you would be scraping deep down behind it, which I will do eventually to get the sinew off, but I want to clean off the sinew so that it'll dry and I won't have to be scraping this off when it's hard, because it dries quite hard. Okay. So we're trying another tool Charles just made out of an old hoe. It's got a nice handle to it. I can press down with my other hand comfortably, and it's loosening up that layer so I can just rip it off, which seems to be pretty good. Doesn't seem to work quite as slick as the ulu. Could maybe sharpen it a bit. So the ulu, this crescent-shaped knife, very traditional. Ulu is, I believe it's Inuktitut language for woman's knife. Nice short little name. And this one was given to me, and a friend of mine actually put a new handle on it because the old handle was all loose. A lot of times you can use it like this. You've probably seen footage of people putting a piece of meat in their mouth and slicing it off like that. Super for skinning. I use it for processing salmon, different fish. You can actually press right down and through the bones with it. You can get a lot of strength, like a lot of push behind that when you get your body behind it. I guess it's designed for, it's designed for women because it's a more precise tool that you can really do a lot of jobs with, which is what women traditionally were into, the processing of the meat and the skinning and the tanning and everything like that, and the men were more into the hunting knife, which has a completely different shape and function. So that's the ulu. Beautiful. So I got this lovely piece of sinew here. I'm hoping to actually use it for thread for sewing things later. It's all coming off in a nice piece. I cut off some of this down here because it's kind of it was short, but these are nice long pieces. And this is kind of a dual purpose here, because what's being left when I take this off is this nice clean scraped hide. So it's just another part of the hide that we can use for other purposes. And a lot of the other stuff we're taking off, we're saving for the dog. So I'll let that dry, and then you can pull the threads and use them for sewing.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the original sinew.
Oh yeah.
Now everybody uses synthetic sinew.
Yeah.
But isn't that nice?
They're tough too.
Very tough, beautiful.
They're nice and tough.
Yeah. And I'll probably take this home and tack it up on something, a piece of wood or something, and let it dry really stretched and straight. And that's lots of thread in there.
Oh yeah, there is.
careful about the way. Sometimes when it's stretched out this way like this, you can easily gouge it that way. So it's good to stretch or to scrape against, like perpendicular to it.
Yeah.
I'm really using it on a tough spot just to see. I like that it, I can get a lot of body leverage against that tool. Where the ulu, I'm just really just using my fingers and my hands, but this I can kind of really push on it. And I'm not familiar enough with it to know how hard I can push with it, but that's what you do when you're learning the nature of this particular hide, and eventually you get your toolkit down to where you know what works the best. In the old days they used to make really nice scrapers out of, you know, femurs and different big heavy bones, and they'd shape the end, put a stone, sometimes a stone blade into the end, so that they could really get some traction on that. I like this tool because it does a lot all at once. It covers a bigger area than the ulu.
What kind of scraper are you using now?
Charles just made it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we used to make the bone. Piece of bone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bone with a little blade in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Peter and I had. He made it out of some bones from the deer.
Yeah. So, Charles has made us all kinds of tools today, and this adjusted edge on this old D-hoe seems to be the one that really takes this hair off. So we pretty much got the other side fleshed. We're just making rawhide, so we're not going to get too fussy about making it really, really beautiful like we would if we were going to tan it. And now we got to get the hair off this side. And a lot of people like to take the epidermis layer off. And I went at this and cut it off just to see how deep we'd have to go and what we'd be left with. And I feel like it's kind of a lot thinner than I want it to be for drumhead, so I would like to just leave this epidermis on. And when it dries, it'll be almost transparent. So we're just trying to get all the hair off as good as we can here, and clean it up so that when it dries, it'll look nice and smooth.
Jennifer, do you want to tell us about your tool? Came out of your kitchen, eh?
It's actually a spatula that I found, and Charles just kind of shaved down the edges, and it works actually pretty good.
Yeah, I see that.
Old spatula tool.
So you can see that it's really all about getting the right tool for your body, for how your body works the best for you, and just what you want to do with the finished product really makes a difference. How much time you spend on it, and you just got to keep trying until you find a configuration that works. But we're going to try and get this all ready to dry. today so that we can just let it dry on the frame, and maybe we'll come back and show you how that looks. That hair's still really on now.
Wonder that why made any difference.
So there's Goldie chewing on the moose bone. We've got a few of those. It's a couple of weeks after the moose hide scraping session, and we got enough of the hide cleared off of the fat on the one side and the hair off the other side, so that we could actually get I think it was enough for 2 drums or 3 drums and maybe 4, depending on if we can squeeze a smaller drum out of one of the areas. So so we cut the hoops size. We traced the size onto the hide and cut them out of the hide, and then we just took those pieces of rawhide and re-soaked them a little bit, just through the time that it took for us to eat lunch. And so after lunch it was nice and soft again, and we also had cut some thin laces. So I guess they were about 1/4 of an inch thick when they were soaked. And so after lunch we got our hoops centered on our pieces of rawhide, and we stretched our drums. And so basically this is the drum. It was an 18-inch hoop. As you can see, the hoop is quite nice laminated hoop, and these are the lacings that we pulled the pieces of hide that we cut for the drum itself. We pulled it just snug, but not real tight. But when it dried, it dried nice and tight. You can even hear them, how tight they are. And I just put a little rawhide wrap around this nice little wooden frame, little wooden hoop here, and a little piece of material so that I can hold it nicely. And I'm really happy with this drum. This is what she looks like. It's a Thunderheart drum. Has a variation in the sound around the edges. Has a really nice loud tone to it. Very resonant. So this is the first drum I've made with a moose hide, and I really wanted to use moose hide because it's real thick. You don't have to stretch it very tightly in order to get a really nice resonant sound to it. And it seems to be the best hide for this very dry climate where we live, whereas the thinner hides seem to work better for moister climates. So that's what you can do with a rawhide. It's great from a moose.